Lashana Tova, Umetuka. May you have a sweet, glorious year filled with miracles and wonders because it befits this season. This is the 5,782nd year. And we are going forward into higher levels of knowledge, into spiritual redemption, higher states of consciousness, glorifying the Creator and recognizing the reality of our duality as one. To those who say, Shema Israel, hear, O Israel, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem our God, Hashem Echad is one. What does that one God mean? One. What is one God? What does one God mean? One. And I think that the forefathers and the prophets and the Kabbalists know. And the Tanya, I think I read a book called Tanya, talks about God is one. One infinite, transcendental intelligence that is the source of everything. And that man is an individualized expression of that. And that the totality of life consists of two aspects: the non-changing, eternal, unmanifest. And I think we call it here in this tradition, Ein Sof. And you have the manifest, changing, temporal, physical, relative, biological, gender-based, culture-oriented world, physical world. But the totality consists of two aspects, the whole. And most people are identified, first of all, are ignorant of the whole, not knowledgeable of that whole from an intellectual perspective, and more importantly, from an experiential perspective, because knowledge is structured in consciousness. So we have to have the experience of the fullness of life. And so this year, 5,782nd, pay bet. Pay representing the mouth, speech. The mouth for two things, speech and silence. There are times for both. And the wise men know. So, bet for duality, blessings, baraka, the creation, bereshit, the creation. So this year is a year coming of speaking truth, being appropriately silent unless you're inspired to speak by the creative intelligence that one experiences when you are an artiste. It's the creative intelligence that speaks. It's the creative intelligence that sings. It's the creative intelligence that composes. And you are the recipient as the son and the servant of God. And this is your work for God. So becoming identified with that in this year, recognizing the importance of speaking truth and celebrating the grand theme of creation. What is the grand theme of creation? Let me ask you. And the answer is diversity. Look around. We see flowers, trees, mountain, ocean, rivers, fish, infinite type of creatures, infinite. So, and this is this infinity of relative phenomena is just an expression of the infinite ocean of pure being and intelligence, where all the laws of nature are included, that gives rise. So this is this nothing that this something rises up out of. Baruch Hashem. See? And knowing that. So this is the year to appreciate diversity. Talk about diversity and not lauding one ethnic group of another. And it's the year to debunk blackness or debunk whiteness. Amplifying blackness to me is the same as amplifying whiteness. So those are two inappropriate strategies that will give rise to unity. And we have to understand that what we are and the thing that unifies us is the unified field of pure being, the source of consciousness. And that we all, and that's innate, inherent in our physiology, is this consciousness, this saved consciousness, by virtue of the laws of nature appropriate for this being, it's given rise to this phenomenon, and the laws of nature appropriate for the evolutionary odyssey of this being has given rise to this phenomenon. That's all. So we need to stop acting like little children, as the case has been, and we were, because why would make us children? We were children because we were not aware of the totality of life. We heard about it from the East, and Easterners came, but the Easterners don't make impressions on the Westerners because the Western mind is scientific, and the Eastern mind is intuitive, and the intuition is much higher than the science. So the Easterners got to the relative, got to the transcendent much early in the history of their development, and the West is just becoming aware, I think, mid-century, mid-20th century. I think that the great rishis from the East came here, and I think it's 1970, a genius, I think at UCLA, doing some research, Dr. Keith Wallace, he substantiated that there was a unique physiological state associated with fourth state of consciousness. He found a fourth state of consciousness that was objectifiable. Physiologically could be objectified and substantiated, and also looking at different alpha rhythms in the brain and different physiological phenomena associated with the different states of consciousness, or this state of consciousness. So going forward now, we understand now. Going forward now has substantiated what the East has known, the West knows now as a unified field of pure being consciousness. They talk about the unified field in quantum physics. They kick that around, which says that. But this is what our prophet Moses wrote a long time ago. Hashem told him that. Hear, Israel, my people, hear you. Shema Israel, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Echad. And I'm sure that the great thinkers in this great nation of Israel know this. I have no doubt. I read about it all the time. So this is what we're bringing now. This is coming down, this disseminating down, so that someone who's just recently been resurrected, because in this says to experience the light of enlightenment that's penetrating the darkness in the universe. This is a phenomenon that's taking place. In other words, I wouldn't be sitting here really talking to you at this level. It's unprecedented. And that's because the light of enlightenment has shone, and consciousness is being awakened to itself as being omnipresent. And as we continue to practice our different disciplines that allow us to transcend and divest ourselves of materiality. That's the word that Rabbi Nachman uses in chapter 4 in the Likutei Moharan. So beautiful. This is about this. All of this was after his death, but even while he was alive, he's talking about Moses. He had certainly obtained a state of divesting himself of his materiality and was able to bind himself to the light of the infinite. Such a beautiful statement to knowers of reality. In order that you would have to know what's he talking about. And if you don't know what Rabbi Nachman's talking about, you just run past that. So to those of you who read the Likutei Moharan, how did this grab you? What does this say to you? No, does it say anything to you? Because what it said to me, coming as an outsider into your house, and Hashem giving me the Likutei Moharan by a wonderful young man up in suffering New York, gave it to me, and I said, okay, I'll read it. I read it, and I said, oh my goodness, Rabbi Nachman's talking about the transcendent, and he calls it the infinite light. And he said, but this can only be done as running and returning. That's so Rabbi Nachman is describing meditation. And he calls it a two-stroke, which is a two-stroke process, going into the field and coming out of the field. And Rabbi Nachman used the words running and returning. He says very clearly you cannot stay in this state, because to be in this state is to be submerged with the infinite creator, the infinite field of being, which ultimately after this life is over. That's why when a certain level of consciousness, that is a man who is ignorant of his essential nature, may die. But a person who's aware, as Moses was, and many other great saints and sages of their authentic nature, there's no such thing as death. There's divestment of materiality permanently. But even while they was alive, have this ability, because this is where the creativity comes from. Morning and evening through our prayers and our disciplines and interacting. I see, and the one that I found, because I came from the East, from 24 years old, being initiated into the process of diving deep into the self and having that divine light infused into my subjective intelligence so that it continues to become universalized. And so this was my quest as a young man, then to find it in the East because it's omnipresent, find it in the Tao, find it in the church, find it everywhere. What we don't find is a systematic means by which everybody can have the experience. We have discussions by illuminated individuals, souls like Rabbi Nachman in this case, but he doesn't tell you how to get to this. He implies it and infers it in his other teachings as a function of interacting with the Aleph Bet, which is true. But you have to know that and interact with the Aleph Bet, because the power of the power of the Aleph Bet has a very definitive effect on the neurophysiology. So it's interacting with that transcendental light, that same light becomes infused into our mind and our physiology through the interaction of the light. And in other meditative processes, where you go inside, you transcend. And Rabbi Nachman also experiences sometimes that when you're reading the Aleph Bet, you reach a moment where you have a transcendental experience of your soul seeing the light and glimpse of the Aleph Bet, and you having a neurophysiological response to that. It may even articulate the words in a more profound and intense way than before. So this is a very, very beautiful season in our life to go forth and teach. And I teach in a very systematic way to pour, because I'm stationed here in the pour realm to bring light to the darkness, to say things that have never been said, to teach things, to talk Shema, to teach the Amida, to give them the Lashon HaKodesh, to say, here's something called the Anabakoach. All of these beautiful treasures that the Yehudim have used down the course of time, now I become the inheritance of. It's my inheritance because I'm Yeshua. I inherit this. And it comes to me, and I get to give this to you and say, here, read Anabakoach, because the people in Israel know that Rabbi Neo ben Hakana, Nuania, I think his name, ben Hakana, in the first century CE, composed this prayer according to cosmic and Kabbalistic logic. You know, there's a method to the madness and the spirituality, like there's a spirituality in the arrangement of all the prayers having to do with Nikudot, and interaction of consonant and vowel and cantillation marks. All of these are mystical ways of facilitating an awakening of the self. And the self, when it is awakened, is a universalized being. The self is not relative. I could not be universalized in singing the power of blackness. That would be ignorance on my part. I can tell you that it's a relative phenomenon, but the truth is that we are all a network of pure consciousness, pure being, on the ocean of being, rising up in proportional to our universal acquisition of knowledge along the odyssey of time, in time, from this fullness to that fullness. Purnamida, Purnamidam. See, from one fullness to one fullness, they say in this tradition. We're using these words. So it's a very beautiful time this year. It's a very beautiful time to search out technologies of consciousness, as I am the recipient of this knowledge as Yeshua. It comes with the territory, so that I can give those people who are on the corridor of my destiny, Aleph Bet. I can give to you on the corridor of my destiny, Anabakor. I can give to you on the corridor of my destiny, Tikkun Haglali. 10 sets of psalms that rectify the Brit, that we as a nation, Hebrew nation, slaves in the West, were acculturated, conceived, grown up in immortality as a way of life. That's what makes you disconnected from consciousness that's growing. And now, the great gift of the light of consciousness, the light of God, the flow of consciousness. And the key word for this year, 5,782, is consciousness, because consciousness is all there is, all there. And where's the consciousness? In you. You are the expression of the consciousness. And when you have self-reflection technique, a technique coming born off this shoot of meditation, transcendental meditation gives birth to a shoot. This shoot, Baba Yeshua, not with no organization, Baba Yeshua, teaching now, having lived in India, having practiced 50 years, having witnessed and seen the benefit, having been to the Kumbh Mela, having been to Jerusalem, having been to sit with Yeshua, having been to sit with Nana Nachman Meumann, having been to sit with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, having been to sit with Rabbi Isaac Luria in Sfat. How can I be a normal man to come and tell you normal things? I must tell you mystical things, that these men and their energies just radiate into be in the presence of this great energy. Something intelligent, intelligence interacts with your intelligence and you are transformed. That's why I sing Nanak Nachman Nachman Mi Uman, because it is a faith melody. And a faith melody imparts the wisdom inherent in the faith melody. Nanak Nachman Nachman Mi Uman is a specific faith melody for the highest wisdom in this dispensation, because there are many types of faith inherent in any type of belief system. Rebbe Nachman teaches in, I think, in lesson 64, even in heresies. People got a song that they sing, a melody, so this is a melody. Just like the suffering, when we was in suffering and slave, we had those old suffering songs. It's suffering melody, whoa, well, we couldn't do nothing but suffer, man. Now we got Nanak Nachman Nachman Mioma. Do the research and try. Don't impugn me. Don't say I'm celebrating a Jewish man. I'm not celebrating ethnicity. I'm celebrating wisdom. The wisdom that a man accrued because of his sadhana, because of his discipline. When you read the life of Rebbe Nachman, young man coming in with that type of fervor and discipline and commitment to find the highest light, he found it. No doubt about it. But once he finds it, you're no longer an ethnic person. You're not talking to a black man. Oh, yes, you're talking to a black man, but you're talking about a universalized being who is to tell you about our transcendental self, the pure field of being, the unified field of pure consciousness, where there's nothing exists but potentiality. And this is the wisdom that's so necessary to go forth into the 21st century, because racism must die. And this conversation is for those who are sufficiently awakened to their self to know, because this truth is not mine. I am the voice of consciousness that speaks universal truth to itself, and it reverberates with itself and bears fruit. Same way Maharishi did. Was never talking for himself. So we have this wisdom that's come this year, 5,782. Pay, bet, mouth, speaking, silence. Speaking blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam atah kadosh v'shemeka kadosh ukto shebeko yom yaleluka silah. And for somebody else, this is beautiful, beautiful classical Hebrew, spoken with the dialect of an African-American man who is an autodidact, self-trained. But good enough to get the blessing, the authentication from heaven, because I'm validated within, not rabbinic external court, but validate from within with life, happiness, joy, creativity, peace, and blessings and conversations to tell you, because I don't really plan to talk to you. It just ends up being that way. And so if I could tell you the beautiful things, look at chapter 4 of Likutei Moharan. Beautiful. And there was also a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lesson in chapter 64. Oh, for reading that. So this book is such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book. It's a book of wisdom. So anyway, may Hashem bless us and keep us with a year that's full of miracles and wonders and blessings. And may we laud the diversity and teach that it is based in singularity of the one and only true God. Baruch Hashem.